Captain Marcus Chen stood at attention in the pristine white command chamber aboard the Zephyrian flagship, his human military uniform looking surprisingly crude next to the flowing, crystalline garments of the aliens surrounding him. The weight of 3 galaxies' worth of political tension pressed down on his shoulders as he faced Princess Lirelai of the Zephyrian Empire. The princess was beautiful in an otherworldly way that made Marcus uncomfortable. Her skin shimmered with a soft blue luminescence, and her elongated limbs moved with an almost liquid grace. Most unsettling were her eyes, large silver orbs that seemed to peer directly into his soul. When she spoke, her voice carried a musical quality that made the universal translator sound almost apologetic for converting her words into harsh human speech. "Captain Chen," she said, her hands clasped behind her back as she paced before him. "I understand you have been briefed on the delicate nature of our situation." Marcus nodded curtly. "Yes, Your Highness. The Chronari Empire believes you are mated to one of their own. If they discover the truth, they will consider it grounds for war." The truth was far more complicated than that simple statement suggested. 3 months ago, Princess Lirelai had been captured by Chronari forces during a diplomatic mission gone wrong. To protect herself from forced marriage to a Chronari warlord, she had claimed to be already mated. The Chronari, bound by their own strict honor codes, could not touch another being's mate without declaring war on that being's entire species. The lie had bought her freedom, but it had also created an impossible situation. The Chronari demanded proof of this mysterious mate. If they discovered no such person existed, they would not only resume their pursuit of the princess, but would also consider her deception an act of war against their empire. "The Earth Alliance has agreed to provide this proof," Princess Lirelai continued, her silver eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "You will pose as my mate for exactly 1 solar cycle. You will attend 3 formal gatherings where Chronari representatives will be present. After that time, we will stage a believable dissolution of our bond, and you will be free to return to your duties." Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced. He had volunteered for this mission because his commanding officers had made it clear that the alternative was a 3-way war that would devastate billions of lives. The Earth Alliance was still relatively new to interstellar politics, and they desperately needed the Zephyrian Empire as an ally. "I understand the political necessity, Your Highness," Marcus replied, "but I need to know exactly what this arrangement will entail." Princess Lirelai's luminescent skin flickered slightly. What Marcus had learned was equivalent to a human blush. Chronari culture places great emphasis on physical displays of affection between mates. "We will need to appear intimate in public settings, nothing beyond what human couples might do in their courtship rituals, but convincing enough to satisfy Chronari observers." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Here he was, a battle-hardened soldier who had faced down plasma cannons and energy weapons without flinching, and he was nervous about holding hands with an alien princess. "There's something else," the princess said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "My people have telepathic abilities. Weak ones, but enough that other Zephyrians will sense if our bond is completely artificial. I will need to establish a minor psychic connection with you." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. No one had mentioned telepathy in his briefings. "What does that mean exactly?" "Think of it as sharing surface emotions. You might feel echoes of what I'm experiencing, and I might sense your basic emotional state. Nothing deeper than that. The connection will fade naturally once we end the arrangement." Before Marcus could respond, an urgent chime filled the chamber. A Zephyrian aide glided into the room, his usually composed features showing clear distress. "Your Highness," the aide said in rapid Zephyrian, which Marcus's translator converted in real time. "Long-range sensors have detected a Chronari diplomatic vessel. They're requesting permission to board. Admiral Thexhai himself is aboard." Princess Lirelai's skin went pale, losing much of its natural luminescence. Admiral Thexhai was the very warlord who had originally sought to claim her as a mate. His unexpected arrival could only mean one thing. He suspected something about her claimed mating. "How long until they board?" she asked. 15 standard minutes, Your Highness." Marcus stepped forward. "Your Highness, if we're going to do this, we need to start now. That psychic connection you mentioned, how quickly can you establish it?" Princess Lirelai looked at him with surprise. Most humans, she had been told, were deeply uncomfortable with telepathic contact. "Almost immediately, but Captain, You should know that the process can be intense. You'll experience my memories and emotions directly for several moments. Do it, Marcus said without hesitation. If Admiral Thexai is as dangerous as my briefing suggested, we can't afford to have him sense any deception. The princess moved closer to him, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns of light that danced beneath her skin. Please don't resist the connection, she said softly. The more you fight it, the more painful it will be for both of us. She placed her hands on either side of his face, and Marcus felt a sudden rush of warmth spread through his mind. For a moment, he was no longer Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Alliance. He was Princess Lirelei, feeling the terror of being trapped aboard a Chronari vessel, the desperate creativity that had led to her lie about being mated, and underneath it all, a profound loneliness that took his breath away. But there was something else in the connection, something that made both of them gasp in surprise. The artificial bond they were creating resonated with something deeper, something that felt startlingly real and natural. Princess Lirelei stepped back, her silver eyes wide with confusion and something that might have been wonder. That wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the chamber doors opened and a group of imposing Chronari warriors entered, led by a massive figure whose scarred hide spoke of countless battles. Admiral Thexai had arrived, and the real test was about to begin. Admiral Thexai dominated the chamber simply by existing in it. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his reptilian form was covered in thick, scarred hide that spoke of countless battles across the galaxy. His forearms moved with predatory grace, and his yellow eyes held an intelligence that Marcus found deeply unsettling. When the Chronari spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Princess Lirelei, Admiral Thexai said, inclining his massive head in what passed for a respectful bow among his people. I have traveled far to meet this mysterious mate of yours. Marcus felt the princess's hand slip into his, and through their newfound connection, he sensed her carefully controlled fear. What surprised him was how natural her touch felt, as if they had been holding hands for years rather than minutes. Admiral, Princess Lirelei replied, her voice steady despite the anxiety Marcus could feel radiating through their bond. May I present Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Alliance, my chosen mate. The Chronari Admiral's eyes fixed on Marcus with the intensity of a predator sizing up potential prey. Marcus had faced down enemy fire and stood his ground against alien warlords before. But something about Thexai's gaze made his skin crawl. Through the connection with the princess, he felt her surprise at his composure. A human, Thexai rumbled, circling around them slowly. How unexpected. I was not aware that Zephyrians formed bonds with such primitive species. Marcus felt anger flare through the connection, though whether it was his own or the princess's he couldn't tell. The casual insult was clearly intended to provoke a reaction, and Marcus had to fight every instinct that told him to respond aggressively. Love recognizes no boundaries of species or star systems. Admiral, Princess Lirelei said smoothly, surely the Chronari, with their vast understanding of the universe, appreciate that emotional connections transcend physical forms. It was a masterful deflection, turning the Admiral's implied insult into a challenge to Chronari wisdom. Marcus squeezed the princess's hand gently, and through their connection, he felt her surprise at his supportive gesture. Admiral Thexai stopped directly in front of them, his massive form casting a shadow over both smaller beings. Indeed, and how did this connection come to be? Marcus felt the princess's momentary panic through their bond. They hadn't prepared a detailed backstory for their supposed relationship. In that instant of shared uncertainty, something remarkable happened. Marcus felt the princess's memories of her capture, her loneliness, her desperate need for someone to understand her burden as royalty, and she felt his own memories of leaving Earth, the isolation of command, and his own struggles with duty versus personal desire. We met during the Arcturus summit 3 cycles ago, Marcus said, the lie flowing smoothly as if he had lived it. The princess was luminous. Her dedication to peace between our peoples was inspiring. Through their connection, he felt the princess's amazement. The details he was providing weren't from any briefing. They were drawn from the emotions and images he was sensing from her own mind. I found his directness refreshing, Princess Lirelei added, building on his story. So, most diplomats speak in circles. Marcus says what he means and means what he says. It's a rare quality. Admiral Thexhi's forearms crossed in what Marcus recognized as deep skepticism. How convenient that this mating occurred so recently before your capture. One might almost think it was fabricated to avoid more suitable arrangements. The chamber fell silent except for the subtle hum of the ship's systems. Marcus could feel the princess's fear spiking through their connection, but also her determination not to show weakness before the Chronari Admiral. "Admiral," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "Are you suggesting that the princess would lie about something as sacred as a mating bond? Because if you are, then you're also suggesting that I would participate in such deception. I take that as a personal insult to my honor." The dangerous edge in Marcus's voice was entirely genuine. Whatever political game they were playing, he found himself genuinely protective of the princess. Through their connection, he could feel how much this meant to her, how desperate she was to protect her people from war. Admiral Thexhi's eyes narrowed. "Your honor, human, is not my concern. However, if this bond is genuine, you will not object to proving it." "What kind of proof?" Princess Lyrelai asked, though Marcus could feel through their connection that she already feared the answer. "The Chronari have certain techniques for verifying the authenticity of emotional bonds. Old traditions, but reliable ones." The Admiral gestured to one of his subordinates, who stepped forward carrying a small crystalline device that pulsed with an inner light. Marcus had no idea what the device was, but through his connection with the princess, he felt her recognition and terror. It was a Chronari truth sensor, capable of detecting deception by reading the subtle electromagnetic patterns generated by different emotional states. "The device will scan both of you simultaneously," Admiral Thexhi explained with what might have been amusement. "It will detect the presence or absence of genuine emotional attachment. Mated pairs show distinct synchronization patterns that cannot be faked." The princess's grip on Marcus's hand tightened almost painfully. Through their bond, he felt her certainty that they were about to be exposed. The artificial psychic connection they had established was too new, too shallow to fool a Chronari truth sensor. But then something unexpected happened. As the subordinate activated the device and pointed it toward them, Marcus felt their connection deepening. The initial artificial bond that Princess Lyrelai had created was being reinforced by something much more real. The genuine protective instincts Marcus was feeling toward her, and her own growing trust in this stranger who was willing to risk everything to save her people. The device hummed for long moments, its crystalline structure shifting through various colors. Admiral Thexhi watched the display with intense concentration, his scarred features revealing nothing. Finally, the device chimed softly and went dark. "Curious," the Admiral rumbled. "The readings show a recently established bond, but one with unusual depth for its age. Almost as if..." He paused, studying both of them carefully, almost as if the bond was formed under extreme emotional circumstances. Marcus felt the princess's confusion through their connection. She didn't understand what had just happened any more than he did. "Love often strikes when we least expect it, Admiral," Marcus said carefully. "Sometimes the greatest bonds are forged in the shortest time." Admiral Thexhi stared at them for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps. The device confirms emotional synchronization between you. However, I would like to observe this bond more closely. I will be attending the Galactic Council meeting on Nexus Prime in 10 cycles. I trust you will both be there?" It wasn't really a question, and they all knew it. "Of course," Princess Lyrelai replied. "We would be honored by your presence." As the Chronari delegation prepared to leave, Admiral Thexhi approached them one final time. "Enjoy your bond," he said, his voice carrying an undertone that Marcus couldn't quite interpret. "Such connections are precious and rare." After the Chronari had departed, Marcus and the princess stood alone in the chamber, still holding hands. Through their connection, Marcus could feel her confusion and something that might have been hope. "What happened with that device?" Marcus asked quietly. Princess Lyrelai shook her head slowly, her silver eyes meeting his. "I don't know. The bond we created should have been too shallow to fool a Chronari truth sensor, but something changed when the device activated. I felt something real." Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. What had started as political theater was becoming something neither of them had expected. And with Admiral Thexhi's obvious suspicion and the upcoming Galactic Council meeting, they were going to need every advantage they could get. The real question was whether what they were beginning to feel for each other would be enough to save them both. The journey to Nexus Prime took 5 standard days, and Marcus found himself spending more time with Princess Lyreley than the original arrangement had specified. What had begun as necessary preparation for their public appearance was evolving into something neither of them had anticipated. They walked through the observation deck of the Zephyrian vessel, the vast starfield providing a backdrop for their conversation. Through their psychic connection, Marcus could feel the princess's genuine curiosity about human culture, while she sensed his fascination with Zephyrian history and customs. Your people fought a war that lasted 300 years just to establish the principle that individuals should choose their own mates? Princess Lyreley asked, her luminescent skin flickering with what Marcus had learned indicated intense interest. The War of Hearts, Marcus confirmed. It seems dramatic now, but at the time, forced political marriages were destroying entire bloodlines. People were killing themselves rather than be bound to someone they couldn't love. The war ended when both sides realized that marriages based on genuine affection produce stronger alliances than those based on political convenience. Through their connection, Marcus felt the princess's wistful longing. Her own situation, trapped by duty and political necessity, had left little room for personal choice. The irony that she was now in an artificial relationship to avoid another artificial relationship wasn't lost on either of them. "What about you?" she asked softly. "Have you ever experienced this? Genuine affection?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Once during the Centauri campaign. She was a communications officer on my ship, Sarah." He paused, feeling the princess's gentle curiosity through their bond. "She died when the ship was destroyed. I was off vessel at the time, leading a ground operation." Princess Lyreley stopped walking and turned to face him. "I'm sorry. Through our connection, I can feel that the loss still affects you." "It's why I volunteered for this mission," Marcus admitted. "My commanding officers thought I was being noble, sacrificing for the greater good. But the truth is I don't have anything to go back to. No family, no romantic attachments. If this arrangement went badly, I wouldn't leave anyone behind to mourn." The princess's hand found his, and through their connection, Marcus felt her surprise at his honesty, followed by a warmth that took his breath away. "You're wrong about that," she said quietly. "If something happened to you now, I would mourn. This connection we share, it's becoming more real every day." Before Marcus could respond, an urgent chime filled the observation deck. A Zephyrian aide approached them with obvious reluctance. "Your Highness," the aide said, "we've received an encrypted transmission from Nexus Prime. Intelligence reports suggest that Admiral Thexhai has brought more than just a diplomatic delegation. Our sources indicate he's assembled what amounts to a small invasion force." Princess Lyreley's skin went pale, and through their connection, Marcus felt her fear spike. "How many ships?" 17 Chronari heavy cruisers plus support vessels. Officially, they're listed as an honor guard for the Admiral's diplomatic mission. Marcus felt his tactical mind engaging automatically. "That's not an honor guard. That's an occupation force. He's planning something." The aide nodded grimly. "Our intelligence suggests that Admiral Thexhai intends to challenge the authenticity of your mating bond publicly during the council session. If he can prove deception, Chronari law would give him the right to claim Princess Lyreley as spoils of dishonor." Through their connection, Marcus felt the princess's despair. The Galactic Council operated under complex protocols that often favored traditional powers like the Chronari Empire. If Thexhai could expose their arrangement as a fraud, the political consequences would be catastrophic. "There's more," the aide continued reluctantly. "Admiral Thexhai has requested a formal Chronari bonding verification ceremony. It's an ancient ritual that tests not just emotional connection, but physical and spiritual compatibility as well." Marcus felt the princess's shock through their bond. "What does that entail exactly?" Princess Lyreley's voice was barely above a whisper. "Chronari bonding verification involves a series of challenges designed to test every aspect of a mated pair's relationship. Physical coordination, emotional synchronization, shared decision-making under pressure, and—" She hesitated. "And?" Marcus prompted. "Intimate knowledge that could only come from genuine closeness. Personal details, private moments, shared experiences. Things that can't be fabricated or learned through briefings." The implications hit Marcus immediately. They had known each other for less than a week. While their psychic connection had created genuine emotional intimacy, they lacked the years of shared experiences that a real mated pair would have. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked the aide. 3 standard days until the council session. Admiral Thexhai has requested that the verification ceremony be conducted publicly, as part of the diplomatic proceedings. After the aide departed, Marcus and the princess stood in silence watching the stars wheel past the observation windows. Through their connection, Marcus could feel her fear, but also her determination not to give up without a fight. "We need to create a lifetime of shared experiences in 3 days, she said finally. Marcus nodded. "It's not impossible. The psychic connection works both ways, right? You can share memories with me and I can share mine with you?" "In theory, yes. But that level of mental intimacy, it would require removing almost all barriers between us. You would experience my memories as if they were your own, and I would experience yours. Everything. Including things you might prefer to keep private." Marcus considered this. Military life had taught him to compartmentalize, to keep his emotional and professional lives separate. The idea of sharing everything with another person, even an alien princess he was growing to care about, was terrifying. But through their connection, he felt the princess's own fear at the prospect, and her willingness to do it anyway to protect her people. "There's something else," Princess Lyrelei said softly. "The deeper our connection becomes, the more difficult it will be to sever when this arrangement ends. If we share memories at the level required to fool a Chronari verification ceremony, the psychic bond might become permanent." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "Permanent how?" "We would be able to sense each other's emotions and general well-being across any distance. Think of it as being perpetually aware of another person's existence. It wouldn't interfere with daily life, but you would always know that I was alive and healthy, and I would know the same about you." The implications were staggering. Marcus had entered this arrangement expecting a brief political charade. Now he was being asked to consider a lifetime connection to an alien princess he had known for less than a week. Through their bond, he felt the princess's careful neutrality. She was leaving the decision entirely to him, despite the fact that her life and the fate of her people hung in the balance. Marcus looked out at the stars, thinking about Sarah, about duty, about the strange turns his life had taken. Then he turned to face the princess, whose silver eyes held a mixture of hope and resignation. "If we're going to do this," he said quietly, "we need to start now, and we need to do it properly. No half measures." Relief flooded through their connection, followed by something that felt remarkably like joy. "Are you certain?" Princess Lyrelei asked. "Once we begin this level of memory sharing, there will be no going back." Marcus took her hands in his, feeling the warmth of her luminescent skin. "Princess, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Whatever fate had planned when it brought us together, I think we need to trust it." As they prepared to begin the intensive memory sharing that would either save them or bind them together forever, neither Marcus nor the princess noticed the small Chronari listening device that had been discreetly attached to the observation deck's hull during Admiral Thexhai's visit. The trap was already set, and they were walking directly into it. The memory sharing began at dawn, ship time in the princess's private chambers. Marcus had expected something clinical, perhaps involving technological assistance. Instead, he found himself sitting cross-legged on the floor facing Princess Lyrelei, their hands connected in a complex pattern she had taught him. "The key is to stop resisting," she explained, her voice soft in the dimly lit chamber. "Human minds are naturally defensive. You need to consciously lower those defenses and trust me completely." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to relax, but years of military training made it almost impossible to voluntarily make himself vulnerable. Through their basic connection, he felt the princess's patient amusement. "Perhaps we should start with something simple," she suggested. "A happy memory from your childhood." Marcus thought of summer evenings on Earth playing in his grandmother's garden, while she told him stories of distant stars. As the memory surfaced, he felt the princess's presence in his mind, not intrusive but warmly curious. Suddenly she was experiencing the memory with him, the smell of earth roses, the sound of his grandmother's laughter, the feeling of being completely safe and loved. "Oh," Princess Lyrelei breathed, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful. I can feel the love your grandmother had for you." The sharing became easier after that. Marcus experienced the princess's memories of growing up in the crystal spires of Zephyr Prime, the weight of royal responsibility settling on her shoulders at an impossibly young age, the loneliness of being surrounded by advisors but having no real friends. Hours passed unnoticed as they traded experiences. Marcus shared his military academy days, his first command, the camaraderie of soldiers who trusted each other with their lives. The princess showed him diplomatic ceremonies, the intricate dance of interstellar politics, the burden of making decisions that affected billions of lives. But it was the painful memories that truly deepened their connection. When Marcus finally shared the memory of Sarah's death, the explosion that destroyed his ship, the frantic search through debris for survivors, the terrible moment when he found her body, the princess wept with him, feeling his grief as if it were her own. In return, she shared her memory of the Chronari capture, the terror of being powerless in enemy hands, the desperate creativity that led to her lie about being mated. Through her memory, Marcus experienced the claustrophobic fear of the Chronari prison cell and her growing certainty that she would be forced into a marriage that would destroy her spirit. "I understand now," Marcus said softly, "why you were willing to risk everything on a deception. And I understand why you volunteered for this mission," she replied. "You weren't running from grief. You were looking for a way to honor it." As the second day of memory sharing progressed, something unexpected began to happen. The memories they shared started to blend and merge, creating new experiences that belonged to both of them equally. Marcus found himself remembering diplomatic receptions he had never attended, while the princess recalled military campaigns she had never fought. Dr. Zara, the ship's chief medical officer, monitored their progress with growing concern. "Your neural patterns are synchronizing at a rate I've never seen before," she informed them during a brief break. "The connection you're forming is deeper than anything in our medical literature." "Is that dangerous?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," Dr. Zara admitted. "Zephyrian bonding with other species is extremely rare, and never at this intensity. You're creating new neurological pathways in real time. The changes appear to be permanent." Princess Lyrelai looked at Marcus through their deepening connection, feeling his lack of regret despite the doctor's warnings. "Do you want to stop?" she asked quietly. Marcus considered the question seriously. The person he had been 5 days ago would probably be horrified at what he was agreeing to. But the memories he now shared with the princess had changed his perspective fundamentally. Through her experiences, he understood the weight of royal duty, the sacrifice of personal desire for public good, and the terrible loneliness of command at the highest levels. "No," he said finally. "If anything, I want to go deeper. Whatever Admiral Thexai has planned, we need to be ready." The final day of preparation brought startling developments. Marcus discovered he could now understand Zephyrian without his translator, drawing on the princess's lifetime of linguistic knowledge. The princess, meanwhile, found herself thinking in tactical terms, unconsciously analyzing the Chronari threat with military precision. More disturbing was their growing ability to sense each other's thoughts, even when they weren't actively sharing memories. During a strategy session with the ship's senior staff, Marcus found himself responding to questions the princess was thinking, rather than questions that had been asked aloud. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Zara reported to the ship's captain. "They're developing a genuine telepathic bond. Not the limited empathic connection typical of Zephyrian relationships, but true mind-to-mind communication." Captain Veltar, the ship's commanding officer, studied the medical reports with concern. "Will they be able to function independently when this mission is over?" "I'm not certain they'll want to," Dr. Zara replied honestly. "The neural integration is so complete that separation might cause significant psychological trauma for both of them." Meanwhile, Marcus and Princess Lyrelai remained focused on their preparation, unaware that their connection was being monitored, not just by their own medical staff but by Chronari, intelligence operatives who had infiltrated Nexus Prime's communication networks. "Admiral, Thexai studied the intercepted medical reports with satisfaction. The humans and Zephyrians had played directly into his hands. The bonding ceremony he had planned would expose not just the artificial nature of their original arrangement, but the desperate measures they had taken to conceal it." "Perfect," he rumbled to his aide. "They have created a genuine bond to hide their original deception. But Chronari law is clear. Any mating bond created for political purposes, even if it becomes real, is invalid. And the penalty for such deception..." Death for both parties, his aide confirmed. Precisely. Begin preparations for the ceremony, and ensure that representatives from all major galactic powers are present to witness the execution of justice. On the Zephyrian ship, Marcus and Princess Lyrelei completed their final memory-sharing session, unaware of the trap closing around them. Their connection was now so complete that they could communicate without words, sharing thoughts and emotions with perfect clarity. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" the princess asked, though she already knew his answer through their bond. "As ready as we can be," Marcus replied. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Through their connection, both felt a deep sense of rightness about what they had created together. The arrangement that had begun as political necessity had become something profound and unbreakable. Neither of them suspected that Admiral Thexhi's verification ceremony was designed not to test their bond, but to destroy them both. As their ship approached Nexus Prime, Marcus and Princess Lyrelei prepared to face the greatest challenge of their lives, armed with a connection that transcended species and circumstance. But in the depths of space, Chronari warships moved into position around the diplomatic station, and Admiral Thexhi smiled with anticipation. The final game was about to begin. Nexus Prime was a marvel of engineering, a massive space station that served as the neutral meeting ground for the galaxy's major powers. As their ship docked, Marcus could feel Princess Lyrelei's nervousness through their connection, mixed with his own tactical assessment of their situation. The Grand Assembly Chamber could accommodate thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds. Today it was packed beyond capacity, with delegations from every major power in the galaxy. Word of the Chronari verification ceremony had spread, and what should have been a simple diplomatic proceeding had become the most anticipated political event of the decade. Honored representatives, Admiral Thexhi's voice boomed through the chamber as he stood at the central podium, his massive form dominating the space. "We gather today to witness the verification of a mating bond that has significant political implications for our entire galaxy." Marcus and Princess Lyrelei sat in the designated area for subjects of verification, surrounded by Chronari guards who towered over everyone else in the vicinity. Through their connection, Marcus felt the princess's growing unease as she observed the elaborate setup. "This seems excessive for a simple verification," she whispered to him. Marcus nodded grimly. His military experience was setting off alarm bells. The positioning of the guards, the number of Chronari ships outside the station, the way Admiral Thexhi was presenting the ceremony, everything suggested this was not going to be the straightforward procedure they had prepared for. "The Chronari Empire has developed these verification procedures over millennia," Admiral Thexhi continued, "to ensure the authenticity of mating bonds that affect interstellar politics. Today's ceremony will test not only the genuineness of the emotional connection between Princess Lyrelei and Captain Chen, but also the legitimacy of its formation." A murmur ran through the assembly. That last phrase hadn't been mentioned in any of the briefings Marcus had received. Through their connection, he felt the princess's sudden spike of fear. "What does he mean by legitimacy of formation?" Marcus asked her through their mental link. "I don't know," came her worried response. "That's not part of standard verification protocols." Admiral Thexhi gestured to his aides, who wheeled out a complex array of crystalline devices that Marcus didn't recognize. "These instruments will not only detect the presence of emotional bonding, but will also reveal the circumstances under which that bond was created." Dr. Zara, seated in the Zephyrian diplomatic section, stood abruptly. "Admiral Thexhi, this equipment was not part of the agreed verification procedures. We object to the use of untested technology on Princess Lyrelei." The Admiral's yellow eyes fixed on the doctor with predatory intensity. "Dr. Zara, are you suggesting that Princess Lyrelei and her mate have something to hide? Because if the bond is genuine and legitimately formed, this equipment will only confirm that fact." It was a masterful political trap. Any objection to the procedures would be seen as evidence of deception. Through their connection, Marcus felt the princess's growing understanding of how completely they had been outmaneuvered. "We have nothing to hide," Princess Lyrelei said, standing gracefully. "We consent to whatever verification procedures the Admiral deems necessary." Marcus stood beside her, his hand finding hers automatically. "We're ready," he confirmed. "Excellent," Admiral Thexai rumbled with obvious satisfaction. "Let us begin." The first phase of verification proceeded much as they had expected. The crystalline devices scanned their emotional states, confirming the deep bond that existed between them. Marcus felt a moment of relief as the readings clearly showed their genuine connection. But then Admiral Thexai activated a different set of instruments, and the chamber filled with a low, harmonic hum that seemed to resonate inside Marcus's skull. "These devices," the Admiral announced, "will reveal the temporal formation pattern of the bond. Genuine mating bonds formed through natural courtship show specific development patterns over time. Artificially created bonds, even if they later become genuine, show distinctly different signatures." Through their connection, Marcus felt the princess's horror as she realized what was happening. The instruments would reveal that their bond had been artificially created just days earlier, even though it had since become genuine. According to Chronari law, this would invalidate their mating regardless of its current authenticity. The crystalline array pulsed with increasing intensity, and data began flowing across holographic displays visible to the entire assembly. Marcus didn't need to read Chronari to understand what the patterns were showing. A bond that had been artificially initiated and then rapidly deepened through intensive sharing. "Fascinating," Admiral Thexai said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "The readings show a bond that was artificially created 5 days ago, then intensified through forced memory sharing. While the emotional connection has indeed become genuine, its artificial origins are unmistakable." A collective gasp rose from the assembly. Marcus felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon them, and through his connection with the princess, he shared her despair as she realized how completely they had been trapped. According to Chronari law, Admiral Thexai continued, "Any mating bond created for political purposes, regardless of whether it subsequently becomes genuine, is considered fraudulent. The penalty for such deception is severe." Princess Lyrelay stepped forward, her luminescent skin blazing with defiant brightness. "Admiral, our bond may have begun artificially, but what exists between us now is completely real. We have shared our memories, our fears, our hopes. We know each other in ways that go far beyond mere political arrangement." "And yet," the Admiral replied coldly, "you entered into this deception with the specific intent to avoid legitimate political obligations. Captain Chen, did you or did you not agree to pose as Princess Lyrelay's mate to prevent her from fulfilling her duties to the Chronari Empire?" Marcus felt the trap closing around them. Any answer he gave would confirm their original deception. Through their connection, he felt the princess's resignation as she prepared to accept responsibility for their situation. But then something unexpected happened. As the Chronari instruments continued their scans, one of the devices began emitting an alarm signal. The holographic displays flickered and shifted, showing new data that caused Admiral Thexai's confident expression to falter. "What is that reading?" demanded Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Council, studying the displays with obvious confusion. Admiral Thexai's aide rushed to the instrument array, his scarred features showing concern. He spoke rapidly in Chronari, and through the princess's linguistic knowledge, Marcus understood every word. "Admiral, the temporal scanners are detecting an anomaly. There appears to be a pre-existing connection that predates their first meeting." The chamber erupted in confused murmuring as representatives struggled to understand what this meant. Admiral Thexai's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. "Impossible," he growled. "Run the scan again." The aide complied, but the results remained the same. The temporal analysis showed traces of a connection that existed before Marcus and Princess Lyrelay had ever met, a faint but unmistakable psychic resonance that suggested they had been destined to bond. Through their connection, Marcus felt the princess's amazement mixing with his own. Neither of them understood what the instruments were detecting, but the implications were staggering. Dr. Zara stood again, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Admiral, these readings suggest the presence of what Zephyrian science calls a resonance bond, a rare phenomenon where two beings are psychically compatible at a level that transcends species and circumstance. If such a bond existed before they met, then their artificial arrangement merely activated a connection that was already destined to form." Admiral Thexai's confidence was visibly shaken. Resonance bonds were legendary even among the Chronari, spoken of in ancient texts but never scientifically verified. If the readings were accurate, then Marcus and Princess Lyrelei hadn't created an artificial bond. They had discovered a natural one. "This changes everything," Ambassador Krell announced. "If a resonance bond is confirmed, then their mating would be considered not only legitimate but sacred under the laws of most galactic civilizations." Through their connection, Marcus felt a surge of hope from the princess, mixed with continued confusion about what was happening to them. Admiral Thexai studied the instrument readings for long moments, his forearms crossed in obvious frustration. The trap he had so carefully prepared was collapsing around him, undone by a phenomenon that none of them fully understood. But as Marcus watched the Admiral's expression, he realized that Thexai was not ready to concede defeat. Through his connection with the princess, Marcus shared a sudden, chilling certainty that their greatest trial was still ahead of them. Admiral Thexai stood motionless for several long moments, his yellow eyes studying the instrument readings that had just undermined his carefully planned trap. The resonance bond detection had changed the legal landscape completely, but Marcus could see the calculation in the Admiral's expression as he searched for another angle of attack. "A resonance bond," the Admiral finally rumbled, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent chamber. "How convenient." However, even if such a phenomenon exists, there remains the matter of timing and intent. Marcus felt a chill of foreboding through his connection with Princess Lyrelei. The Admiral wasn't finished with them yet. "Captain Chen," Admiral Thexai continued, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of false reasonableness, "you have admitted that you entered this arrangement with political purposes. Princess Lyrelei created her initial deception while under Chronari protection. Even if a resonance bond existed, the activation of that bond through deliberate artificial means for political gain remains a violation of Chronari honor." The Admiral gestured to his guards, who stepped closer to Marcus and the princess. "Therefore, I invoke the right of challenge." A shocked silence fell over the entire assembly. Ambassador Krell rose from his seat, his usually composed features showing alarm. "Admiral, the right of challenge has not been invoked in over 2 centuries. Are you certain you wish to proceed?" Through their connection, Marcus felt the princess's terror as she understood the implications before he did. The right of challenge was an ancient Chronari tradition that allowed any warrior to question the honor of another through personal combat. If invoked in matters of mating fraud, the challenged parties could be forced to defend their bond through trial by combat. "I am certain," Admiral Thexai replied with grim satisfaction. "Captain Chen, as the male of the mating pair, I challenge you to single combat to determine the legitimacy of your bond with Princess Lyrelei. If you defeat me, your bond will be recognized as legitimate regardless of its origins. If you lose," he paused dramatically, "Princess Lyrelei becomes forfeit to Chronari justice." Marcus felt his tactical mind racing even as shock flooded through their connection. A challenge to single combat with a Chronari admiral was essentially a death sentence. Thexai was nearly 3 meters tall, had 4 arms instead of 2, and possessed the strength and combat experience of someone who had conquered entire star systems. But through his bond with the princess, Marcus also felt something else, her absolute faith in him and a love so deep it took his breath away. She believed in him completely, even in the face of impossible odds. "I accept your challenge," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was agreeing to. "Marcus." "No," Princess Lyrelei said aloud, her hand gripping his arm. But through their connection he felt her pride in his courage mixing with her fear for his safety. Admiral Thexai smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. As the challenger, I have the right to choose the terms of combat. We will fight without weapons, relying solely on physical strength and skill. The combat continues until one participant yields or is incapable of continuing." Ambassador Krell attempted to intervene. "Admiral, this is highly irregular. The Galactic Council does not typically permit. The Galactic Council has no jurisdiction over matters of Chronari honor." Thexai interrupted. "Captain Chen has accepted my challenge freely, unless he wishes to withdraw and concede the illegitimacy of his bond." It was another masterful trap. Withdrawing from the challenge would be seen as an admission of fraud, which would result in the same outcome as losing the fight. Through their connection, Marcus shared a moment of perfect understanding with the princess. They were trapped, but they would face that trap together. I do not withdraw, Marcus said firmly. The Grand Assembly chamber was quickly reconfigured for combat, with the central area cleared and surrounded by energy barriers for spectator protection. Marcus was given time to prepare, though there was little preparation that could make up for the physical disparity between him and his opponent. Dr. Zara approached him during the brief recess, her medical scanner detecting elevated stress levels but also something unexpected. Captain, your neural patterns are showing remarkable stability given the circumstances. The bond with Princess Lyrale seems to be providing some kind of psychological reinforcement. Marcus nodded, feeling exactly what the doctor was describing. Through their connection, the princess was sharing her strength with him, her confidence in his abilities, her absolute certainty that they could overcome any challenge together. There's something else, Dr. Zara continued quietly. The resonance bond readings are showing continued evolution. Your neurological integration is deepening even now under stress. I've never seen anything like it. Princess Lyrale joined them, her luminescent skin flickering with the complex patterns that indicated deep emotional turmoil. Marcus, through our connection, I can feel your tactical analysis. You're planning something. Marcus looked at her, this alien princess who had become more important to him than his own life. The Admiral is bigger and stronger, but he's also overconfident. He expects me to fight like a human soldier, using conventional tactics, but I'm not just a human soldier anymore. Through their bond, the princess felt his meaning immediately. The memory sharing they had undergone hadn't just created emotional intimacy. It had given Marcus access to her knowledge of Zephyrian martial arts, just as it had given her access to his military training. The flowing water technique, she breathed. It's designed for smaller fighters to overcome larger opponents by using their size and strength against them. Marcus nodded. Combined with human military combat training and the tactical advantages our connection provides, I can feel your emotions, which means I might be able to sense his intentions through your empathic abilities. When the combat began, Admiral Thexai advanced with the confidence of someone who had never lost a personal challenge. His forearms moved in complex patterns designed to overwhelm his opponent through sheer physical superiority. But Marcus didn't fight like a human soldier. Drawing on the princess's memories and knowledge, he flowed around the Admiral's attacks like water around stone, using Zephyrian techniques that no Chronari had ever encountered. When Thexai struck with overwhelming force, Marcus wasn't there. When the Admiral tried to grapple, Marcus slipped away using movements that seemed impossible for a being with only 2 arms. Through his connection with Princess Lyrale, Marcus could feel her empathic reading of the Admiral's emotions, confusion, growing frustration, and underneath it all, a beginning thread of doubt. The combat continued for longer than anyone had expected. Admiral Thexai's initial confidence gave way to grim determination as he realized his opponent was far more formidable than anticipated. But Marcus was human, and despite his advantages, the prolonged combat was taking its toll. Then, as Marcus began to falter, something extraordinary happened. Through their deepening connection, Princess Lyrale began sharing not just her knowledge and emotions, but her physical strength as well. Marcus felt a surge of energy that shouldn't have been possible, as if he were drawing directly on the princess's life force. The tide of combat turned. Using a combination of Zephyrian flowing techniques and human military precision, Marcus finally found an opening in the Admiral's defense. A perfectly executed joint lock, applied with strength that came from 2 beings working in perfect harmony, brought the massive Chronari to the ground. Admiral Thexai struggled for several moments before finally speaking the ritual words of surrender. I yield. The assembly erupted in stunned cheers and gasps. Marcus helped the defeated Admiral to his feet, both beings showing mutual respect despite their conflict. Your bond, Admiral Thexai said quietly, so that only Marcus could hear, is stronger than I believed possible. Perhaps there are some connections that transcend politics and honor codes. As Ambassador Krell officially recognized the legitimacy of Marcus and Princess Lyrale's mating bond, the princess rushed to Marcus's side. Through their connection, they shared a moment of triumph that was made more profound by what they had discovered about themselves. They had entered this arrangement as strangers playing roles for political necessity, but in the crucible of challenge and conflict, they had become something entirely new. 2 beings so perfectly connected that they could share strength, knowledge, and will across the boundaries of species and circumstance. The question now was what they would do with a bond that had proven to be far more powerful than either of them had ever imagined. 3 months after the events on Nexus Prime, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Earth Alliance flagship Harmony, watching the twin suns of the Zephyrian system paint the stars in brilliant colors. Through his permanent connection with Princess Lirelei, he could feel her approaching before she entered the chamber. The relationship between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire had been transformed by their public bonding. What had begun as a desperate political arrangement had become the foundation for the strongest interstellar alliance in galactic history. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, and joint defense pacts had followed in rapid succession. The Council of Ministers has approved the new education exchange program, Princess Lirelei said as she joined him at the viewport. Human children will study on Zephyr Prime, and Zephyrian younglings will attend Earth universities. Marcus smiled, feeling her satisfaction through their bond. Our fake relationship is producing some very real benefits. Is it still fake? The princess asked softly. It was a question they had been dancing around for weeks. Their bond had evolved far beyond anything either of them had anticipated. They could share thoughts, emotions, and even physical sensations across vast distances. When Marcus was injured during a diplomatic mission, the princess had felt his pain from 3 star systems away. When she experienced joy at a successful trade negotiation, Marcus found himself smiling for no apparent reason while reviewing fleet deployments. No, Marcus said finally, I don't think it's been fake for a long time. Through their connection, he felt her relief and something deeper, a love that transcended the political circumstances that had brought them together. Admiral Thexhai has requested a meeting, the princess said, changing the subject. He's proposing a 3-way alliance between the Chronari, Zephyrian, and Earth governments. Marcus raised an eyebrow. The same Admiral Thexhai who tried to have us executed? The same. Apparently our demonstration of what's possible when different species work together has impressed even the Chronari leadership. They're calling our bond a diplomatic revolution. Through their connection, Marcus sensed the princess's amusement at the irony. The desperate deception they had begun had become the most significant diplomatic development in centuries. There's something else, Princess Lirelei continued, her mental voice taking on a more serious tone. Dr. Zara's research into our bond has produced some interesting results. Marcus felt a flicker of concern. The ongoing medical studies of their connection had been a source of fascination for xenobiologists throughout the galaxy. Good interesting or bad interesting? Revolutionary interesting, the princess replied. She believes our resonance bond isn't just rare. It might be the next step in interstellar evolution. The ability for different species to form genuine psychic connections could change everything about how galactic civilization develops. The implications were staggering. If the process could be replicated safely, the barriers between species that had defined galactic politics for millennia could gradually disappear. Instead of trade negotiations conducted through translators and cultural interpreters, diplomats could literally share understanding at the deepest level. Dr. Zara wants to study other potential resonance pairs, the princess continued. She's identified several diplomatic teams where the emotional compatibility suggests the possibility of forming similar bonds. Marcus considered this development. And how do you feel about being galactic pioneers in interspecies relationships? Through their bond, he felt her complex emotions, pride at what they had accomplished, concern about the responsibilities that came with their unique status, and underneath it all, a deep contentment with the life they were building together. I feel like we've been given a gift, she said simply. Not just our connection, but the opportunity to help build something better than what existed before. Their conversation was interrupted by an aide announcing the arrival of a priority communication from Earth Command. Marcus accepted the transmission, and Admiral Sarah Torres appeared in holographic form. Captain Chen, Admiral Torres said, I have new orders for you. The Earth Council has approved the establishment of a permanent interspecies diplomatic corps, and they want you to head the program. Marcus felt surprise from both himself and the princess. Admiral, I'm honored, but I'm not a diplomat. I'm a soldier. Not anymore, Admiral Torres replied with a slight smile. Your success in creating lasting peace through personal connection has convinced the Council that traditional diplomatic approaches need to evolve. They want you to train a new generation of diplomatic officers who can form genuine relationships across species boundaries. Through their bond, Marcus felt the princess's excitement at the possibility. The work would allow them to remain together while contributing to the larger goal of galactic unity. "What about my current military obligations?" Marcus asked. "Transferred to the diplomatic corps with equivalent rank," Admiral Torres confirmed. "Princess Lyrelei has been invited to serve as co-director of the program, if she's willing." Marcus looked at the princess, whose luminescent skin was flickering with the rapid patterns that indicated intense joy. Through their connection, he felt her certainty that this was exactly the path they were meant to take. "We accept," Marcus said. After Admiral Torres signed off, Marcus and Princess Lyrelei stood together watching the stars, both contemplating the future they would build together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't volunteered for this mission?" the princess asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. "I'd probably still be commanding a patrol ship somewhere, fighting minor skirmishes and trying not to think about Sarah. You'd be trapped in a marriage to Admiral Thexhai, slowly dying inside while maintaining diplomatic appearances. Instead, we're about to reshape how the galaxy thinks about relationships between species," the princess mused. "Fate," Marcus said quietly. "You said it yourself back at the beginning. Fate had other plans for us." Through their bond, he felt her agreement, along with a deep sense of gratitude for the unlikely series of events that had brought them together. The first class of interspecies diplomatic corps trainees would begin their education in 6 months. Human and Zephyrian students would learn to work together, and eventually, other species would join the program. Dr. Zara's research suggested that resonance bonds, while rare, were possible across multiple species combinations. "We're going to change the galaxy," Princess Lyrelei said softly. Marcus took her hand, feeling the familiar warmth of their connection deepen. Together, through the observation port, they could see ships from dozens of different civilizations moving through Zephyrian space. Traders, diplomats, scientists, and explorers all working toward a more connected future. What had begun as a desperate deception to avoid war had become the foundation for a new age of interstellar cooperation. As they watched the peaceful traffic of ships representing species that had been enemies just months before, Marcus and Princess Lyrelei shared a moment of perfect understanding through their bond. They had found something neither of them had been looking for, a love that transcended politics, species, and circumstance, and in finding that love, they had given the galaxy a glimpse of what was possible when beings chose connection over conflict, understanding over fear. The stars seemed brighter as they contemplated the future they would build together, one relationship at a time.